Hey folks, I'm Red Monster SC, and in this video, I'm going to cover all of the mining changes that arrived with 3.19. The entire gameplay loop has been flipped on its head thanks to a complete reworking of every piece of mining hardware, fundamental changes to what elements can be found and where, and enormous changes to the variety of rock masses that you'll encounter in the verse. Forget everything you knew about mining, because this game has changed. Alpha 3.19 delivers the most significant changes to mining gameplay that I think we've ever seen. What resources appear together, where those resources can be found, and the equipment we use to fracture and extract the rocks have all seen fundamental balancing changes. We still have the same mining vehicles with the same familiar elements, but the old meta of Quantanium mining having a clear revenue advantage is gone. I'm going to break down each of these changes and talk about my opinion on how it's going to affect the future of mining. But before I get into all the details, because there are a lot of them, I wanted to plug two of my most requested resources. First, my mining cheat sheets have all been updated for Alpha 3.19 and can be downloaded from my website. These include new material pricing, best locations, equipment details, and some helpful resources for deposit types. I've also updated my Google Docs master mining cheat sheet for the 3.19 changes and built out an updated bulk mass calculator to factor in the new mineral densities. The current version is ready to roll for 3.19, and I'll be adding features and enhancements over the coming weeks. You can find direct links to both of these in the description below or in the pinned comment. So let's dive into it. First and foremost, all mineable ores have had their sales prices updated to reflect a clearer balance in element rarity. Here's the new price breakdown for 3.19. The big eye-opener here is the new price per unit of Quantanium, going from 8,800 per SCU to over 23,000 per SCU. This huge price advantage is balanced out by the fact that Quantanium as an element will now be incredibly rare. I'll talk about that in detail as we move into the resource distribution. Next are the new, rare, Tier 1 elements. These are all worth around 7,000 per SCU, where they'd previously priced in around 3,000 per SCU. That's a huge boost, and puts these new Tier 1 elements close to what Quantanium used to net you. These will be the new ores to hunt for, while Quantanium is going to be that nice little bonus that pops up every now and then. Beyond that are the uncommon Tier 2 elements ranging from 2,000 to 4,000 per SCU. These would previously net you between 500 and 1,000 per SCU, and in the past, I wouldn't even bother with refining them due to the low profit per cargo space. The new price makes them worth looking at, although you'll want to scoop these up last. And last are the Tier 3 elements. These are the common element types you'll see across every rock type, but varying between 2 or 3 core elements within each location. They range in price between 300 and 500 per SCU, where previously they'd only sell for 100 to 200. While I consider these elements the filler material you'll want to leave behind, they are probably going to make up the bulk of the material used for the mining missions and the crafting systems. While Dolivine, Aphorite, and Hadanite didn't see any price increase, the big surprise here is the newly introduced gemstone, Janelite. This incredibly rare element rakes in a whopping 27,000 per unit, making it over 100 times the value of Hadanite, and a sizable payday if you're able to locate a deposit. Which is exactly what its trade-off is. Janelite will be very difficult to locate, appearing only in specific cave systems, and quantities will be very limited. For Prospector and Mole mining, the top tier elements are now worth much closer to what Quantanium was earning before, which is a good step to diversifying what materials that mining crews are after. This breaks up the previous monoculture of Quantanium mining being the clear favorite for profits, and now diversifies what mineable elements to focus on for maximizing revenue. My expectation moving forward is that we're going to see a lot more diversity in where you can mine while taking a slight profitability hit compared to Quantanium mining prior to 3.19. These rare elements are now worth almost as much as Quantanium used to be, but they only have a chance to spawn, and it will be mixed in with other low-grade materials. It will be easier to fill your cargo hold, but the material won't be worth quite as much. I don't expect that there will be many changes for rock mining or hand mining, with the exception of those willing to put the time in at the sand caves, trying to locate those rare Janelite deposits. Next up on the list of major changes is a complete rebuild on how elements are distributed throughout the verse. Starting in 3.19, there will be 2 or 3 core elements present at each location, which is defined by planet, moon, Lagrange point, and asteroid field. Every deposit you find, regardless of the deposit type, will have a large proportion of one common element. These common elements are aluminum, copper, corundum, iron, quartz, titanium, and tungsten. After that, the uncommon and rare elements may be present based on a percentage chance defined by deposit type, with uncommon materials having a higher chance to spawn, while the rare elements have a lower chance. The following table shows the uncommon or rare ores you'll find in each of the main deposit types. As you can see, every ore has a chance to spawn in any deposit type, although the chances could be low. You might also notice that the Quantanium surface deposit no longer exists. That aligns with their new rebalancing to make the rare elements feel more rare, and having a guaranteed Quantanium percentage doesn't really fit into their intended gameplay. Instead, Quantanium will have a low percentage chance to appear in any deposit. And while we're on the subject of Quantanium, the volatile material timer has been extended from 15 minutes to 25 minutes, likely to account for the future travel times in Pyro, or maybe the developers got tired of me racing the clock and losing.
There we go.
With a variety of materials available in each deposit type, the best way to find Tier 1 materials right now is to just scan everything and hope that the RNG gods are nice to you. In my opinion, this doesn't make much sense, as I think it lessens the importance of the deposit type and drives too much overlap when randomization comes into play. I'd love to hear your feedback on this, so check the Spectrum post linked in the description and add your comments there. The final major update for mineable materials is that there's going to be a much wider variety of rock masses, from small fragments below 300 mass that are found ready to be scooped up, to gargantuan rocks at over 100,000 mass that require multiple, fully crude moles to fracture. This change in mass distribution is shared between surface deposits and asteroid types, and the rock geometry scales with the resulting mass. You're going to be running into a lot more rocks that will be challenging your loadout. Each ore also has a unique density, affecting how the mass converts into final SCU, so deposits with higher density materials will always be in the higher mass ranges. We used to see rock mass convert at a fixed 50 mass per SCU rate. However, we now see a range of densities from 34 mass per SCU on inert material to over 680 mass per SCU for Quantanium. You can no longer make the simple conversion from mass to SCU, and instead have to feed it into a calculator to estimate the rock's mass. The good news is, my Google Docs masterminding cheat sheet has been updated with a current working model to do just that. So, how should you adapt your mining gameplay with the new mineral distribution, rock types, and mineral densities? First is to know the material prices. Always be on the lookout for those Tier 1 elements, gold, terranite, and bexilite. Don't be concerned if you have some Tier 2 elements mixed in, as they still deliver some value, but try to avoid scooping any of the common Tier 3 elements, as they're low value and will quickly fill up your cargo space. Second is to scan everything. With the way minerals are spawning right now, every deposit type can have any material, including Quantanium. While there are some locations where you have a bit higher chance to find materials, it's entirely up to luck and the RNG gods. Find a location you like, start scanning, and you'll be scooping up valuable material in no time. Third is to mine in areas with low density common elements, aluminum, quartz, corundum, and titanium. These locations will generally have a lower total mass requiring less laser power and ensuring you'll run into fewer rocks that are outside of your capability range. Fourth is to get comfortable delivering mixed loads to the refinery that aren't as valuable as before, but with a shorter turnaround time between loads that help offset your expectations. Because the uncommon materials are so prevalent, there's no way to get around harvesting at least a third of your capacity as filler material unless you get a really clean rake. Tier 2 materials are worth refining, so don't throw them out with the inert, but Tier 3 common materials probably won't even cover the fuel bill. And it's worth mentioning now, but you may find yourself in need of a larger cargo hauler. Because we don't have the volatile material timer to contend with on a regular basis, you'll end up with full loads on a more consistent basis, and refining a lot more of the Tier 2 materials than we had done in the past. You'll be moving a lot more material than before, and so your old cargo haulers may need a capacity upgrade if you do a lot of mining. For Prospector miners, these mass changes mean that if you're running solo, 2/3 of the rocks you're going to encounter are going to be beyond your capabilities. While I can tell this will drive a lot of frustration, I also think it's a necessary change if CIG intends to show off large-scale mining. The Prospector was never intended to handle everything on its own, but we'd grown accustomed to it being fully capable based on the old meta. That changes in 3.19, and I think it's a fact of life that Prospector owners will have to come to terms with. For a solo laser operator, you should be able to fracture rocks on your own between 10 to 15,000 mass, depending on how powerful your loadout is, and a fully crewed mole can handle rocks in the 50 to 60,000 mass on its own. The largest mass rock I've broken so far has been a 90,000 mass tungsten and bexlite deposit, which required 2 fully crewed moles to break, and yielded over 90 SCU of material. I've also seen screenshots of surface deposits with over 130,000 mass, although I haven't gotten a chance to break one of those yet. Like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video, and please consider joining my community, the Red Legion. We're a group of industrial-focused players who thrive on cooperative and supportive gameplay, and we accept members of all skill levels as long as you've got a positive attitude and want to do your part. Everything up to this point has been focused on the rocks, what they'll include, and where you can find them. But that's only part of the changes included with 3.19. Every piece of mining hardware has been updated in a complete rebalance. While these names might seem familiar, you can forget everything you used to know about them, as all of the stats have changed. Mining lasers have been completely retuned so that some of the favorites, like the Lancet, may not be the best options anymore, and the lasers we've all ignored, like the Hofstede and Klein, actually bring some decent bonuses that will finally make them relevant. The Arbor laser also comes as a pleasant surprise, making this starter laser a viable option for novice miners. The most significant change is that there's now a difference in the laser power and the number of module slots between the Size 1 and Size 2 lasers, along with different optimum and maximum ranges. There's also a 30% inert material filter on Size 1 heads, and a 40% inert material on the Size 2s. Laser ranges saw a decrease across the board, so expect to get up close and personal with those rocks. Most lasers cap out at 150 meters to target, with a few like the Helix capping out at a cozy 90 meters. Mole pilots will need to be aware of these changes and start positioning themselves much closer to the rocks as you're getting ready to mine. Next, there's now a minimum laser power factor, and it's definitely not 0. We used to be able to drop power to 0 while still providing the various hardware bonuses, what I called the emotional support laser. However, there's now a hard floor on laser power determined by laser type, with most in the 20 to 25% minimum range, and a few lasers delivering lower percentages. This minimum laser power is going to be crucial for those final breaks when the rocks are small and in need of a finer touch. The large high-powered lasers are going to drive too much power, so you need to either get some distance to the rock, toggle your laser power to keep the charge level from overshooting, or pick a laser head with a lower minimum power. There's also a new extraction laser power rating which only affects the speed at which rocks are extracted. While collecting material at a fractionally faster rate is cool, I would have much preferred the extraction power to affect the size of rocks that could be extracted, so that you might save a few breaks in a large cluster if you choose to tune for it. Beyond that, each laser now has a set of bonuses and trade-offs that are going to require a bit more strategic thinking when setting up your initial loadout. Although we aren't stuck with the hardware we leave at home, more on that in a few. My personal favorites right now are the Hofstede with its low minimum power, large optimal charge window, and reasonable number of module slots, and the Helix, which delivers on total raw power, but trades off a shorter optimal range. In my mole, I equip a Helix 2 in the center turret, with a Hofstede in each of the side laser turrets, and this loadout has performed well on rocks up to about 60,000 mass. Similar to mining lasers, mining modules also saw all of the bonuses and trade-offs shuffled around for a complete refresh of what the modules are geared towards. Passive modules still function as they had before, providing a consistent, reasonable bonus with a high price tag, while active modules saw some changes to the number of uses per module and the duration for each use. Here's some of my favorite modules based on the new stats. The Surge saw its most significant change, going from an instant 40% charge level from seemingly nowhere to providing a short-term 150% boost to the laser power. Say goodbye to the double Surge method to cheese your way through impossible mass rocks. I do think the Surge still has a place on any solo mining loadout, as it gives you a 50% power boost to help overcome some of the larger rocks you'll be facing. The XDR modules also have a good combination of optimal charge window increases, while its only downsides are the extraction laser power and inert materials, which are more or less irrelevant given the current spawn chances. I also think the Rieger C3 has a great option for the 25% laser power boost, with a 1% narrower optimal charge window. Stacking multiple Rieger C3s on the same laser will also scale that bonus multiplicatively. In addition to the standard modifier updates, mining gadgets have also introduced a new, and I think rather amazing feature in the cluster modifier. This is a new modifier introduced in 3.19 that affects how likely each material is to separate into one fragment, or many when the parent rock is broken. Certain elements like to cluster together into one fragment, which I call a unicorn break, while other elements will gladly split themselves up across every possible fragment, forcing you to collect a large portion of filler material. Driving this cluster factor higher improves your chances of a unicorn break, and may at least help consolidate your desired materials into fewer fragments overall. The Optimax has a cluster modifier of 60%, which definitely piques my interest, although it comes at the cost of the 30% narrower optimal charge window. The Boremax has a 30% cluster modifier, but a much more manageable 10% resistance downside, which is why I would choose this over the Stalwart. And finally, the Wave Shift with a 100% optimal charge window and 35% instability reduction will be a mandatory pairing when you're trying to run multiple Helix lasers in order to counteract the optimal charge window reductions from each laser. And we can't finish the conversation without mentioning the new Tractor Beam Detachment mode. We are now able to use the tractor beams to remove, store, retrieve, and equip mining lasers, modules, and even cargo storage bags off of the ship while it's in the field. You have to first unlock the ports with the new keybind of Alt-K, which allows you to remove the individual components. You can also remove a fully outfitted laser head with modules attached and store it inside the open areas within the ship, or store them directly into the ship's local inventory. With all of these changes to mining equipment, I think I'm going to need to rediscover my new favorite loadouts. Right now, the loadout that I've found works best is a combination of Helix and Hofstede lasers. The Helix delivers on raw power at the cost of your optimal charge window size, and I use that for the first break, while the Hofstede delivers a manageable minimum power and complementary bonuses for those second and third breaks. I'm currently pairing the Helix with an XTR-XL module to buy back 25% of the optimal charge window, and I'll also include one surge module to push a little more power when it's needed. For the Hofstede, I'm including the Rieger C3 module to make up for the lower total power, as well as an XTR-XL to further widen the optimal charge window. One additional part of my mining kit is a suite of mining gadgets. Because you're going to run into such a wide variety of minerals, with varying levels of resistance and instability, it's important to be able to temper some of the more extreme cases. I'd consider the Optimax a required part of any kit for its clustering bonuses. Avoiding filler material from bad breaks means you'll have a longer and more profitable mining run. I'd also be sure to include a Boremax for its instability reduction in case you come across a Quantanium deposit. And now for the other minor changes. The mining UI has gotten a facelift, providing clearer details on what bonuses your mining loadout is providing, as well as better visual indicator for your range to target. The left side of the interface now shows the scan range, maximum effective range, optimal range, and then an indication for when you're too close to the rock and might suffer adverse effects. The right side has a smaller sidebar showing your current laser power, as well as the minimum charge level for the laser, and the main bar on the right side still holds your optimal charge window. There are now visual indicators for your cargo pods within the central interface, allowing you a visual representation of your ship's cargo pods and their current capacity. In addition, there's now a pretty clear overlay on the HUD when you have volatile material on board, giving you a countdown for the time remaining before it goes critical. Refineries have undergone a complete rebalancing both for the material bonuses that each location provides, as well as the locations where specific lasers, modules, and gadgets can be purchased. My current favorites are Arc L2, Mike L2, and Mike L5, based on the bonuses they each provide for the Tier 1 materials. Sadly, Crew L1 lost most of its good Quantanium bonuses and now holds some steep downsides for both Gold and Bexlite, which may mean that it's a much less traveled station moving forward. There is now a very strong debuff for using multiple mining vehicles on the same deposit, which seems to come in the form of added instability. If you have an existing loadout aimed at reducing instability, then this won't be much of a concern, but it definitely needs to be monitored so you don't accidentally send yourself or your friends into orbit. This is obviously intended to drive players to more multi-crew gameplay, but doesn't preclude a fleet of prospectors from working cooperatively, as long as they can mitigate the downsides. This wouldn't be a Star Citizen video if we didn't take a moment to acknowledge some of the current bugs and their workarounds. First, there's an issue that occurs when rocks are fracturing, which is causing shatter damage to destroy gadgets that were attached to the rock, modules that were attached to your lasers, destroying the cargo bags on your mining vehicle, and even possibly disabling the mole elevator, making it impossible to get back into the ship. This damage is happening even when you get a perfectly executed break with no overcharge, and possibly made worse by the recent reduction in laser ranges. It seems like shatter damage has been increased by an order of magnitude during this patch, with seemingly normal fractures triggering damage warnings and pinging your ship's shields, and I doubt that CIG intended for mining crews to lose 200,000 credits per mining laser for what should have been a normal break. Next is that the laser power management has changed for mouse and keyboard users. Where you would previously use the scroll wheel to manage laser power, you now have to hold left Alt and scroll in order to increase or decrease laser power. This change is paired with the addition of the laser power velocity key binding, which took the default scroll wheel slot. This laser power velocity is designed to make power controls on a keyboard and mouse more precise, letting you fine-tune the rate of change with each tick of the scroll wheel. However, I think this change would have made more sense if they had left the laser power on the default scroll wheel keybind and set velocity to use the Alt modifier key. As it stands, there's going to be a lot of miners banging their faces against the keyboard as they have to relearn their power management controls. Please, CIG, it is not too late to fix this. The laser turrets on the mole are responsible for a few bugs. First is that the distance bar on the left side occasionally loses data and just shows all the markers bunched at the top of the bar. It seems as though the laser can still apply power when this happens, but that isn't a guarantee. The fix for this is to toggle your mining laser power off and back on until you get the proper range indicators. Speaking of turning off laser power, if you don't have a pilot in the seat of the mole and one of the turret operators turns off their power, it will cut power to the entire ship. This isn't much of an issue if you're mining out in space, but if you're hovering in atmosphere over a ground deposit, this will absolutely cause your mole to crash to the ground and possibly sustain some damage. You can avoid this by either having someone sit in the pilot seat, or by landing prior to toggling the laser power. Continuing with the mole turret power problems is that the power interaction button to power on and off your turret seems to be difficult for people to find. As someone that's had a lot of experience in the mole, this wasn't a big issue for me personally. However, I did have several crew members struggle to locate the power interaction button. For the center turret, the interaction is just inside the right MFD screen along the top edge of the window. There's a small rivet detail that I usually aim for. For the side turrets, the interaction is still between the two MFDs, but it's positioned near the top of the MFD screens. It may take you a few tries to locate these normally, but rest assured that they are there and you will get used to them once you've found it the first time. And lastly for the mole turret is that there is a potential for the turrets to be missing detailed readouts or get crossover data from one of the other active turrets. This happened while I was mining with a group and I had no details for the rocks I was looking at, but I was getting details for the rocks my port turret operator was pointing at. Unfortunately for him, he didn't see any details, so we had to coordinate carefully with the other working lasers. This issue only seemed to go away after I got a replacement ship through the insurance claim. Now, we've covered a lot of details here, and I'm excited to discover some of those other hidden gems as I get more time to test the new changes, figure out what mining loadouts provide an optimal balance, and hopefully CIG can apply a bit more polish to round off some of the rough edges. Overall, I think CIG has delivered an improved gameplay loop across many aspects, including new rock masses and equipment overhaul, and while there are a few areas that I think they've missed the mark, I've got a generally positive impression across the board for the number of beneficial changes that have impacted into 3.19. In the coming weeks, I'll be studying and testing different loadouts and trying to get a better feel for the new mining ecosystem, after which I'll be working to deliver an updated mining tutorial series. For now, you can download my updated charts and reference tables from my website, peruse the updated Google Docs master mining cheat sheet to log your own mining adventures, and come watch my live streams on Twitch where I run a Sunday morning mining session every week, as well as a variety of other events on Mondays and Friday nights. I wanted to close out by offering a special thank you to my community, the Red Legion, for all the help and support they've provided. There was a lot of data to collect for this patch, and I appreciate everyone's efforts in helping gather that data. I couldn't have done it without you. I also want to thank my Patreon members who've gone above and beyond every month in helping support the community and my channel. Consider becoming a Patreon today by following the link in the description below. For everyone else, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Discord, and YouTube by following those links in the description as well. Lastly, like and subscribe to my channel for other great mining and industrial content like this. I make a lot of great resources for the community, but it's your support that keeps me going.